welcome to the Up Your Assets podcast. I'm Ray Ferrara, CFP, and the founder and executive chair of Provise Management Group, LLC. Provise is a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We serve about 1,100 clients in over 30 states and manage about $1.9 billion on their behalf as of September 30th, 2024. You can learn more about Provise by going to provise.com. This series of podcasts is broadcasted on the 15th and the 30th of each month. This is an educational program and is not designed to provide personalized individual advice. Having been in the industry for over 50 years, there isn't much I haven't seen, good and bad. As a result, we have more people to interview than I can count. We do not endorse any products on this podcast, nor do we collect any fee from any of the guests we interview. And in case you can't tell by our name, we intend for the podcast to be edgy and fun, in addition to being informative. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce Carolyn McClanahan, MD, CFP, to the Up Your Assets podcast. She's founder of Life Planning Partners, Inc. in Jacksonville, Florida. Yes, both a doctor and financial planner. She lectures around the country, has been quoted in numerous publications, including the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, and seen on television programs like CNBC, talking about the intersection of health and money. In fact, that's how the two of us met about 15 years ago when we spoke in Orlando at a conference together. Today, we're going to explore aging, navigating chronic illness, dementia, and end of life. Carolyn, welcome to Up Your Assets.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
It's great to see you and to have you on the show. It isn't often that you hear about a doctor changing professions, let alone becoming a certified financial planner. Tell us about your journey.
I was in primary care and emergency medicine, and I had always enjoyed investing and opened my IRA back when I was a resident. And then when my husband inherited some money in the mid-90s, we invested that, and he did quite well. And I helped him, and we both did well. And so he was tired of being an engineer. He was an aerospace engineer and wanted to change careers. So in 2000, we had tried to find a financial planner, and we were in our mid-30s at that point. So he wanted to be a track coach and photographer. And I said, honey, I'm not going to support you. So I wanted to make sure that we really had a plan that money that he had was enough for him to hold up his end of the bargain. And so everybody we interviewed, that called themselves financial advisors, financial planners, what they really did was just asset management and not really the financial planning that we needed. So that's where I decided to go back to school just for fun. And I just fell in love with financial planning, and I saw this huge need for people getting advice. And I originally started out as just going to take care of my running partners, me and buddies, and my ER buddies. But then after I actually opened my practice, I was going to do both. And I just started getting this huge influx of people because I was doing real planning. And in medicine, I loved patient care, and I volunteer to this day. And the thing I did not like about medicine, though, is the business side was getting ugly. And also, doctors just aren't very nice to each other sometimes. It's a very hard life. And so I thought, financial planning is a heck of a lot more fun. And I made the switch and opened my firm in 2004, totally quit medicine for a living in 2005. And even though I continue to keep my license active and keep my board certification active because I volunteered at the homeless shelter clinics for the working uninsured, and I'm getting ready to switch my latest volunteer place in the next year.
Well, first of all, let me congratulate you on joining the profession. More than that, really impressed that you're keeping up your medical license and being board certified. Most people don't know how important that can be for a doctor to be board certified, as separated, much like you and I are certified by the CFP Board of Standards as financial planners. And then, on top of that, you've got to go back and often recertify yourself for your board. And so that's just amazing. And thank you for doing that, because wherever you're volunteering those medical services, I know that it's needed and it's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, well, they say a doctor who's a financial planner is better than no doctor at all.
Great. Well, Carolyn, in working with your clients, you have really done an intersection on bringing health and wealth together. So how do you introduce and integrate the health issues into a financial planning engagement?
Yeah, it was very interesting to me when I started in financial planning that I recognized that if financial planners just understood a little bit more about health issues, they could help their clients in so many ways, like from better longevity planning, better how if people have chronic illness, end of life issues, if people have basic things like how to plan for healthcare costs. And so for me, I think it's very important that every advisor just start with a very basic question. And my very basic question that I ask all new potential clients is, tell me what you do to take care of your health. And that opens the conversation up, and it lets you know and lets the client know that this is going to be something that is important to you to know. And if clients ask, why do you need to know that? It's like, well, health matters a lot to your future personal finance. So if I know how you're taking care of your health, I can do a better job being a financial planner for you. And what's going to happen, either the client's going to be very proud and say, yeah, I exercise 5 days a week for 60 minutes at a time, and I recently ran a marathon, and I'm doing a great job keeping my weight under control, or just whatever. Or they may say, my favorite exercise is 12-ounce curls. And that tells you a lot about the client. So if you know what their lifestyle's like and how much they're paying attention to their health, then it allows you to do better planning for them.
Important that you mentioned this early on. Like you, we think financial planning is the center of everything that we do with our clients. And most of the time when clients come in to see us, they think that it is about just managing money. We have to really explain to them that all of the different aspects of being a financial planner, managing money, education planning, estate planning, retirement planning, money management, the list goes on and on. All of those things are subsets of the financial plan itself. And that it's not the other way around. And clearly health makes a great difference in that financial plan, because someone who has a chronic disease at this particular juncture in their life, having a shorter lifespan, there's a different way to try to plan for those folks, because maybe eventually, as we'll talk about a little bit later, they won't be able to do some of those things.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's why it's important, if you have somebody with chronic health issues, we often talk about the go-go, slow-go, and no-go phases of retirement. Their go-go is going to be very short. And so you want to make sure that they're getting great life satisfaction in the present, where ideally they can take better care of their health.
Absolutely. So let's talk about longevity planning. When we first started doing financial planning in the truest sense of the word 35 years ago, we took the plan out to age 90. And then about 20 years ago, we bumped it up to 95. And now we take it up, about for the last 10 years, we take it up to about age 100. And most clients say, well, I'll probably never live that long anyway. And, we talk about erring on the side of caution. And with good medicine, good lifestyle, and the fastest growing age group right now are those centurions that are turning age 100. Maybe they will. But why is it important to plan for such a long time and look at it from a medical standpoint to help people understand why it's so important?
Well, I actually do a little bit differently from you, because it's important to look at somebody's health. So if you have let's say you have somebody with diabetes and high blood pressure, and they weigh 350 pounds and they're not taking care of their diabetes, are you going to plan to age 100 for that person? And if you are, you're doing them a disservice, because that person is not going to live to age 100. And so that's why what I do is I do look at a person's health. And, fortunately, the majority of people that see a financial planner, they have money, and people who have more money generally have better health. So the majority of people who do come to see a financial planner, you would want to use age 100. But if you have somebody who's in average health, or who they don't take care of their health, say they smoke or drink too much, and when you're doing good comprehensive financial planning, you're going to find those things out eventually. Like for us, we're not voyeurs, but we use eMoney, the portal, to look at client spending. And if you see they're spending $2,000 a month on alcohol, then they might have an alcohol problem, unless they have a lot of parties and all their friends are drinking the alcohol. So, you could get an idea of whether somebody has issues. And I often say that financial planners can have a bigger impact on people's health than doctors can, because money talks. And when you show a client how much taking care of their health can save them money, it may actually spur them to do a better job taking care of their health. And so for me, if a client is not perfectly healthy and living a good health lifestyle, we will use 90-85 sometimes. I have one client that we know has poor life expectancy, and we're not even worrying about them running out of money. We revisit our projections every year. So we look at the person's cash flow. How much are they spending? If they continue that spending, how long will their money last? And so we have one client who has very poor health, and we're trying to encourage her to go do everything that she ever dreamed of, tick off that bucket list. I don't care if the projections show, if she kept up that spending, that she's going to run out of money at 80, because with that, she's not going to be able to do that much longer. And we put that into the projections and show her it's okay to do these things. I actually have a talk that I put together a couple of years ago. It's called "Are You Happy Now?" And, to me, a financial planner, first and foremost, should make sure that clients have good life satisfaction now, because it's crazy to make people save, these big amounts of money to live to age 100 if they're not happy now. Because if they're not happy now, then that's going to affect their life expectancy. It's a vicious cycle. So it's not quite the answer I think you were expecting to hear. So yes, it's important to plan for 100 for most people, but for people who don't have perfect health, then you might, and especially people who are on the edge of having enough money, you might want to have a little bit more flexibility in what you're using as your life expectancy.
So that was great. I'm glad you said all of that, because what I meant to say to you is when you're facing somebody with a health issue, you need to know that, because you don't really have to worry about that plan. No, I didn't explain that very well, but I'm glad that you emphasized it and scolded me for not saying it well.
I mean to scold you, but I just say most advisors, it was very interesting. I was at an AICPA meeting. I speak at the AICPA frequently, and in Las Vegas, and they did have a guy that said we should use 100 for everybody, no matter what. And I couldn't help myself. I stood up and said, what if it's a 350-pound person with diabetes and heart disease? And he's like, yes. I'm like, that's wrong. So so a lot of advisors do just reflexively use a year, or an age, and I ask people just to be a bit more thoughtful and really know your client's health status, so you can help them live a better life in the present.
Well, it's important. It's important to me in doing the planning, and it's something that we've added in for a long time. I serve on the board of a 15 hospital healthcare system. So while certainly not practicing medicine, I'm aware of all of the issues that you faced as a physician, still face today as you chat with your clients. And if we can't give them peace of mind now about their money, that's also going to add some stress to their lives. And particularly while they pay attention to all of the talking heads on the media. And that stress obviously causes issues in and of itself. But sometimes people enter into retirement, and take my wife and I, and or me, I should say, there she would be scolding me right there. And but you take the two of us, and we did a lot of traveling. We've been to 80 countries at this point. We've been to all 7 continents. And then 10 years ago, we got a diagnosis that said Kim was afflicted with Alzheimer's, and something I had suspected a couple of years earlier. And then about a year ago, added on to that was a diagnosis of Parkinson's. And that's taken a bigger toll this past year than the Alzheimer's has in terms of her inability to easily walk and get about, et cetera. In fact, we don't even let her walk by herself anymore. So how do you address these issues with your clients and their families? And let me add to that in terms of not only how do you address those issues once everybody knows, but what do you do when you start suspecting something is happening with a client?
Yeah, so first off, I just want to say that I know you're an amazing, well, I know you personally through, financial planning world, and you're amazing in that world, but your wife is very lucky to have you because, being a caregiver for somebody with Alzheimer's and then Parkinson's, there's a lot to that. And it's important, to be able to take care of yourself and when you're taking care of others. And when you have that situation, and you guys did amazing things beforehand, and so it's a perfect example of you made sure you were happy in the moment and doing the big things that were important to you, because then when those bad things start to happen, it leaves fewer regrets, which is great. But people always have to plan for the what ifs, and be resilient. And one mission I've been on, and that's why I put the Are You Happy Now talk together, is I think financial planners spend way too much time trying to predict an unpredictable future, as opposed to helping people become more resilient for whatever the world is going to throw their way. And one conversation that we have with clients when they hit their late 50s, early 60s, is we do what's called an aging plan. So in that conversation, it takes about 1 hour. We make people think through, if certain things happen, what will you do? And I call them the big 4 of aging, of where are you going to live if it's no longer safer for you to live on your own? And when are you going to get help with healthcare decisions? When are you going to get help with financial decisions? And when are you going to quit driving? And it's important to have these conversations while people are well, because if you wait until people are already in trouble, they're going to be very defensive. And oftentimes they're going to know that they have an issue, and nobody wants to open up the can of worms because it means loss of control, life changes, things that people don't want to do. So they just keep hoping that they're going to be okay without facing the truth. And so in that initial conversation, when everybody's well, we take people through, especially like the living situation. Where do you want to age? And most people want to age in place at home. And if that's the case, is your home aging friendly? And if it's not, can it be made aging friendly? And so we actually have an occupational therapist that, she charges like a $500 fee, but so worth it, that will go through a house top to bottom to help you determine, is your home aging friendly and what changes do you need to make? And then we have them make the basic changes that aren't, you don't put grab bars up till you need to, but you make sure you can install grab bars if grab bars are ever needed. So making certain the pieces are in place that if changes need to happen, you can do it. And if the house is not aging friendly, starting to put into that client's brain, you're going to have to either move at some point, or, be prepared to move to assisted living, change homes, whatever it's going to be. So we help them lay out the roadmap long before it's needed, so that when something happens, it's less scary. It's behavioral psychology. When you see things and have done things already, they're not as foreign to you. And so we take them through that living situation. We take them through the financial decision-making. Financial decision-making is one of the first things to go when you're facing cognitive decline. And so we make sure we have trusted contact information for ourselves. So our custodian collects trusted contact information, but an advisor also needs their own individual trusted contact form. And we make it a point to have the clients introduce us to their trusted contacts. Oftentimes it's the children, sometimes it's friends. And then that way, when poop hits the fan, then the trusted contact already knows us, already has familiarity. So it takes, again, the fear out of the situation. Same with healthcare decisions. We make sure our clients have had good conversations with whoever's going to be their healthcare surrogate about what their healthcare wishes are. And then finally, with transportation, it's like, what are you going to do if you get to the point you can't drive? So we help people create transportation plans. And a perfect example, we had this beautiful Irish couple in their early 80s that they actually lived in a very accessible neighborhood, but you still needed a car for some things. And so they didn't know how to use Uber. So I sent my 24 and 26-year-old planners to their house to put Uber on their phone, and they were instructed to use the Uber for everybody to go bar hopping. So the two 80-year-olds went bar hopping with my two 20-year-olds, and they had a blast. And now they keep saying, we need practice. Send Camry and Brett back out so we can go bar hopping again. So, and we need to do that. And I have been doing aging planning now. I actually started that process in 2009, and I've had clients, move through needing long-term care and, or help with finances. And I can tell you, putting those aging planning processes in place prevents so much trouble. If advisors don't do it up front and they stick their head in the sand, then you're just going to have a lot more to deal with when things really start to happen.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, as you were talking there and about giving up the independence of driving, et cetera, I'm come from an Italian family, and my dad was the patriarch for sure. And he was that strong Italian father and patriarch of the family. And the last thing he wanted to do was to lose his car. I finally had to have that tough conversation, not only with him, and of course, what did his son know, even though at the time maybe I was in my mid 60s. So his physician was my next step, was to talk with him. And he said to my dad, Peter, you've got to stop driving. And he said, well, I can drive fine. And he said, no, I'm going to turn your name in to the DMV. And Dad said, well, is there any options? And he said to my dad, he said, sure, you can take this test that's given at the local hospital. And if you pass it, I'll let you drive. Well, my dad took it, and it was right on the borderline. And he kept saying to me, he says, you couldn't possibly do that. He said, everything happened so fast. And I said, well, Dad, that's sort of the point of driving. Everything does happen fast. Anyway, long story short, he still had to take a driving test, which he passed. Went and got his car. He was in an assisted living facility from this condo. He drove it to the assisted living facility, and guess what? He never drove it again.
Wow.
Just knowing that he was able to do that was what was important to him. And it is strange, the things that people are unwilling to give up, but driving is certainly one of them.
Yeah. Yep.
So, unfortunately, we have to deal with clients not only having good times, but sometimes some of these serious things that we're talking about. And ultimately, it's about death. What are the conversations you have with them and their family when you're talking to them about that end of life planning? What steps do you try to take, not only with the individual involved, but perhaps with the spouse and with the other family members?
Yeah. So, end of life planning is definitely one of those things that we focus on always making certain that all the ducks are in a row long before people get diagnosed. So every year we do estate reviews where we check beneficiary designations and titling of all the assets, make sure the clients understand what's in their estate documents. We do ongoing tax planning. So we make sure that the client knows where everything is and why. And so when you get that call of I have cancer or something bad is happening, then I have what's called, I'm a doctor, so I have a triage list of, okay, what are the things that we need to think about now that we know a diagnosis is actually staring us in the face or staring the client in the face, and so the list that starts with the things, what are going to cause financial angst if we don't deal with, so tax planning is a big thing, and making sure that things are, if you have things with step up in basis or things at a loss, that you're not waiting to last minute to do the tax planning and potentially leaving a lot of money on the table for the client. And, people hate to talk about this because it's like somebody's dying. Why are you talking about money? But, the second biggest worry when somebody is diagnosed with a terminal illness isn't so much about dying. It's about, is my family going to be left destitute, or am I going to be able to afford the funds to take care of this illness? So then the other thing that people really have a concern about is cash flow planning. So when you have a serious illness, especially if you want to do things like go out of network or get alternative type care, because people do desperate things in desperate situations, that does the client have the cash flow needs to be able to meet that? And then, so those are the two big things that we put high on the triage list, is making sure we've looked at tax, we review the estate stuff again to make sure everything's titled correctly and the client knows exactly how money's going to pass. That's also a time when we tidy up who are the beneficiaries and make sure we have contact information for all the beneficiaries. Because sometimes, and one thing that made me start doing this is we had a client who left one of the beneficiaries of the IRA, some friend off in Timbuktu that, we didn't have any idea how to get a hold of. And so doing those tiny little things takes a lot of pressure off. The other is basic bill paying. It's amazing to me how people don't understand how things stop when you die. So, too many people now rely solely on electronic statements, and so being able to get into a person's phone if they're ill and dying, so that you can do two-factor authentication. So making sure that the basics are set up so whoever is going to be taking care of the finances is able to physically do so. Now, actually, when I have somebody in a serious situation that I know is the primary caretaker of the finances, I go to the house and sit down at their computer with who is going to be their POA and financial surrogate, and make sure that everything can be done by that person.
We had a client about 3 weeks ago that was in a similar situation, and we got to talking about the bill paying and all of the digital parts of their life. And so I asked him, I said, so what's does everybody know the password to your phone? And he said, well, no, I use face recognition.
Oh,
And I looked at him and it didn't register with him. And I said, so Herb, help me understand how somebody's going to use it after you're gone. And he just looked at me with this blank stare and suddenly realized, oh my gosh, yeah. So you're exactly right.
yeah.
Before I ask my last question, what questions didn't I ask you, or what things did we not touch on that you think are important to leave with the Up Your Assets audience?
Well, to me, so first off, you did a great job covering the big picture of all of the conversations I have when I teach advisors around the country. So thank you, because you had some great questions. I mean, the big thing I want to leave people with is that too many advisors are afraid to talk about health. They just say it's not in my wheelbarrow or whatever. That's, it's not what I do. It's like, well, it's important. And so for clients, I say to them, if an advisor's not talking to you about health, make them talk to you about health, because it's important in your planning. And if I leave any legacy, it's that I hope that the whole financial planning profession considers the integration of health and finance is just a done deal, and that it's no longer an afterthought, that it's just a part of regular financial planning.
You know, I'm all in, and delighted that you're continuing to preach that message across the country within our profession.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you know, I'm famous for coming up with that crazy question. Like when I'm interviewing somebody for a job, one of the last questions I'll ask them is to tell me about a book or a movie that they've recently seen, and what did they take away from that movie or book that they read that they could apply to their own life. And you get a lot of interesting responses to that. But the one I love to do in a situation like this is to ask you, what would you tell a younger Carolyn if you could go back and about your life and say, what would you tell her as you were getting ready to be prepared for being first that physician, but then that physician who transferred into being a financial planner?
Oh gosh, to me that's such a wonderful question where I really wish I could go back and tell myself these things. To go to medical school, get into medical school, you have a lot of people who are very driven going to med school, and getting into med school and then going through residency. Doctors often aren't very nice to each other, and I kind of lost, and I've shared this before in public, so I kind of lost my soul in my late 20s, early 30s, just from not being who genuinely I wanted to be, being that good person, because I'd become cynical. I'd become very, emergency medicine's hard, and I had become not the person I wanted to be. And so thank goodness, I'm the queen believer. You talk about books. My favorite genre of reading is self-help books. You learn so much from all those, just about how to be a better person. And I'm so grateful that I did get therapy and learn how to love myself and not be such a high achiever. And then that actually ended up making me be a better, healthier high achiever. So, so the thing I wish I could tell myself back then is always operate from a place of love and joy, and always lift others up. And I want to publicly thank Cheryl Holland, and I've told her this before, of Abacus Planning. When I came from medicine, I was so used to everybody being mean to each other, and to step in financial planning where, you still expect everybody to be mean to each other, because you think of things like Gordon Gekko, and, you just think it's going to be a nasty profession, to find the most beautiful people in this profession. And so when I went back to school and I thought about becoming a financial planner, I attended my first ever NAPFA meeting in 2003. And it was it was in one of those early meetings, 2003, 2004, Cheryl Holland talked about how because she was up there just sharing all this stuff about her practice, all this, nitty gritty, how to build your own practice, this just amazing stuff. It's like, wow, she's just giving it all out. And she said, when you give from the heart without any expectation of return, it comes back to you in some form or fashion, a gazillion fold. And I said, she seems like the happiest person in the world. I'm going to start living that. And I did. And it's just so many people in NAPFA, FPA helped me with my practice. I went in on my own, having to learn everything on my own. And I could pick up, I became so involved in NAPFA, especially, there were people I could reach out to, and they would answer the stupidest questions to keep me out of trouble. And it's like, I got to pay this back. So I started doing talk. That's how I started doing my talks, when I saw the intersections of health and finance. It's like, this is a way I can get back. So the biggest thing I would just tell myself is, I wish I could have changed about myself. I wish those first 30 years of my life I'd been a nicer person.
Well, you did a good job, perhaps learning it the hard way, but you were, and it's great to call you my friend. And I only wish we could see each other on a more frequent basis. But I want to really thank you for being on the Up Your Assets podcast. It's a delight to have you here and for all the information that you provided to everyone. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate
Well,
it.
my pleasure. And you keep up the good work. And thank you for all you have done for this profession.
Thank you very much. So be prepared to have these tough conversations with your financial advisor and your healthcare individual. All of these are part of planning. And unfortunately, while we all want to plan for those golden years in retirement and think that that's going to last for a long time, I found out a very difficult way that it doesn't work out that way. But we had a plan, and we both of us knew what would happen when something happened to one or the other. And that's what you need to be doing, is planning. And Carolyn, I love the idea of those what ifs that you talked about with preparing to age, I believe is what you called it. And so I'm going to figure out a way to steal a little bit of that good advice myself and try to apply it in our practice. So once again, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Ferrara with Up Your Assets.